.NET MAUI is the hotly anticipated cross-platform application building tool to succeed Xamarin. With the launch approaching rapidly, I want to take an initial look at the product, who it's for, and how it works. If you're curious about what .NET MAUI is and if it's ready for prime time, this is the video for you. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Tim Corey, and my goal is to make learning C# easier. I do that by providing videos here on YouTube multiple times per week, plus I have a weekly podcast. I also provide courses on C#, web development, and much more at IamTimCorey.com. The profits from those sales are what pays for the free content here on YouTube so that everyone can have a great education in C#, not just those who can afford it. In this video, as with most of my videos, I'm going to create some source code. If you want to copy that source code, use the link in the description. All right, let's go over to Visual Studio. And here I'm actually running the preview version of Visual Studio. And the reason why is because .NET MAUI has not yet been released. It should be released very, very shortly. And in fact, if you're watching this video, it may have already been released, in which case you don't need the preview version of Visual Studio in order to use .NET MAUI. But I have the preview version in order to get the latest MAUI bits, which have been in release candidate now for a little while. So they're pretty stable already, and this should be exactly the same interaction that you will have with the released version. So let's create a new .NET MAUI project. You'll see that Visual Studio is a little bit different. Notice the highlighting is a little bit different. And there are a few more options that you'll see that you won't see in your Visual Studio quite yet if this hasn't been released, because this is the latest version of Visual Studio. Okay, so if we search for MAUI and wait for it, again, gotta wait for it, there we go. So this is a preview version. There's still some bugs worked out, especially that search. That search has been a little bit finicky on the preview version, but it should be fixed for the production version. So .NET MAUI has a few different versions. We have the .NET MAUI app, which again is in preview. We have the .NET MAUI Blazor app, and we have the .NET MAUI class library. So let's talk first about what is .NET MAUI and then which one of these should we choose. So .NET MAUI, MAUI is actually an acronym. Microsoft loves acronym. For once, this actually makes it into a actual word as opposed to WPF or WCF or all the rest they choose. But .NET MAUI, MAUI stands for Multi-Application User Interface. Basically, we can run our application on Android, iOS, Mac, macOS, and also Windows and Tizen. So there's a number of different platforms you can run this on. Notice the one that's missing here is Linux. That's not on the list currently. That's a suggested one, but it's not currently in the list of possibilities. So that's what .NET MAUI is. It's the successor to Xamarin. Xamarin it used to work on iOS and Android, and I believe it worked on some Mac as well, but it also is a little bit different flavor of .NET, which is why we had .NET Standard, which will allow us to talk to the various versions of .NET, like .NET Framework, .NET Core, and then .NET for Xamarin. But now they've brought all of that underneath the one .NET, which is technically .NET Core, but we call it .NET 6 at this point. Now, normally they release something like this as part of the .NET release, and that was the plan for .NET 6. However, it wasn't done yet. So they've done kind of an out-of-band work on this, and they're going to release it early, is the last I've heard. So they said Q2 of 2022, which is basically now. So it's going to release soon, but for now it's still in preview, but it's almost ready. So that's .NET MAUI. Now, so it's brand new. It's a reinvention of Xamarin, now with the same .NET 6 underpinnings. Which maybe then asks a question, well then why do we have a version of .NET MAUI that's a class library project? And the reason why is because this class library enables some of the same things with the multi-platform targeting that .NET MAUI itself does. And we'll see some of that I'll probably create a class library so you can see the difference, but it's basically just about the targeting of those platform-specific libraries. Now, .NET MAUI Blazor is something a little bit different, and it's not something we'll look at in this video, but we'll look at it soon. What .NET MAUI Blazor is, it's a Blazor app. It's a web application, but it's designed to be installed on the same platforms: Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, Mac OS, Tizen, and Windows. So, and I'm not sure if I'm spelling or pronouncing Tizen right. I have never used Tizen. But what it's for is essentially it's the same thing as like an Electron app, where we have Electron apps like GitHub Desktop, I believe, is an Electron app. I believe .NET or VS Code is one as well. But essentially they're, real apps, but they actually run a browser to actually execute them. So they aren't just native code installed on the platform. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to install it on more platforms. It allows you to very easily have one code base, but install it ever, kind of like what a progressive web application does, but expanded upon. So this is the .NET version of Electron. But we're not going to cover that today. We're going to cover the .NET MAUI app itself. We're going to say create, and we're going to call this our MAUI demo and our MAUI demo app. And once we create this project will look pretty close to a standard WPF or WinUI project. It's actually kind of a WinUI project, but it's a little bit different. Okay, so it's pretty close. It uses XAML, so we're kind of used to that. So if you're looking at this and going, what is this? This is a WPF or WinUI project type. So if you're familiar with XAML, this will look pretty standard, okay? But there are some differences. So let's look at the differences and see what those differences are. So we can start off with MAUI program.cs instead of program.cs, and we'll see in here we're still using the static class MAUI program instead of just program, but we still have an entry point create MAUI app. And it looks pretty similar to what we already expect. We create the builder, we configure fonts, which is a little different, but it's something. And we use the MAUI app. So you can put dependency injection here, whatever else you want, logging, and so on. It's .NET 6, so you can work with this how you want. Let's look at the actual project type while we're here, and we'll see that, let's unpin this. We'll see that the target framework, .NET 6 for Android, .NET 6 for iOS, .NET 6 for Mac Catalyst are the target frameworks. But then also, if the OS platform is Windows, then we have the target frameworks plus .NET 6 for Windows 10, in that version, 19041, that's that and above. And that's something else we should talk about is that, yes, this runs on a Windows desktop, but it has to be a Windows 10, I believe it's the 1800 version patch and above, or Windows 11. So it will not run on Windows 7, will not run on Windows XP or Vista or Millennium, whatever version of Windows you have. It's not 10 or 11. It will not run. So this does target those upper end Windows platforms versions. So, and this is a conditional, so we're getting a lot more stuff inside of our CS proj file because of the fact that there's a lot more going on. So we have multiple frameworks targeted at once, which is kind of cool to see, just separated by a semicolon. And you also see we can target even more by first checking to see if the build platform is Windows. Because if you're not on Windows, it's hard to build Windows projects because it needs Windows DLLs. So therefore, it's not going to build on those for those platforms. You can also comment this or uncomment this for a Tizen app if you want to do that as well. Here's what's going to output. Here's the root namespace. Yes, use MAUI, and it's a single project with implicit usings. There's a lot more stuff in here. The display name, the app identifier, you'll need to change these for your application, of course. You know, mauidemo.companyname.com, it's intentionally backwards. So this right here would probably be your domain name or your company name, and then your actual specific product name here. So, and then your company GUID or application GUID from your company, and so on. So a lot more stuff going on in here than a standard file. We're not going to go into all of what this is and how it all works in this video. This is a first look video. It's not an in-depth course on .NET MAUI. .NET MAUI has a lot of stuff going on, and there will take a lot of work to get through it all, to understand it all, and that will be quite a few videos. But we'll go over different pieces of it at different times, and maybe you can create a course. If you're interested in a .NET MAUI course, I'd be interested to know that, because I base what courses I create based upon your desires. And so if you go to suggestions.imtimcorey.com, leave that suggestion, or if you find it already there, which I believe is one there already, then upvote it. Let me know that it is of interest to you. Again, that's suggestions.imtimcorey.com. Okay, so there's your app icon, your splash screen, your images that are included, your custom fonts, and other raw assets. So this is the for every platform, this is the basic stuff. But I say for every platform because this stuff is all going to work cross-platform. It's going to work for all the different projects. However, there are some things that you may run into that are platform specific. So we're working right now with the big picture, which is everything. And so our main page will work on all different project types. It's going to work on Android and iOS and so on. And it might look a little different, but that's based upon native controls. And so what happens is it will get compiled into that platform's build process, and it will use that platform's APIs and that platform's kind of look and feel a little bit to make sure that your app looks native to that platform. Now, that's all part of the build process, and think of this .NET MAUI kind of like what .NET Standard was. If you remember, .NET Standard allowed us to build our class library once and use it for .NET Framework and .NET Core and Xamarin and even WinUI or UWP. So this is kind of the same thing. We're building it once, and we're writing the code once. Let's use that terminology. Because then we build it for the various platforms, and it transforms and outputs the correct thing for that particular platform. But sometimes there's platform-specific things you need, which is where this folder comes in, platforms. Notice Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, Tizen, and Windows. And you can keep these or ignore these depending on what you want to do. In fact, if you decide, I don't want to support Android at all, no problem. You could even go into your project file and take out the target of Android, delete that folder, and just not use it. Okay, so you don't have to target Android, or you don't have to target iOS. It's up to you which ones you target, but this allows you to target all of them. So these folders right here are platform-specific things. So for example, the Android manifest. Here are the things that are specific to just the Android manifest as opposed to everybody's manifest. So some things you can put in your project file. For example, here's our icon, here's our splash screen, here's our images, here's our custom fonts. But sometimes you need something specific for Android. Well, Android name, permissions, access network state, and permission for the internet as well. You need these entries as well for Android, where you don't use the same exact terminology for other platforms, or you don't need it for other platforms. So we have the stuff that is basically mapped to every platform. So we use one name for it, but it gets mapped to the API of each platform. And there's some stuff that's specific to that platform, which means we put it into that platform's folder. Now you may ask the question, well then Tim, doesn't that mean I have to know how every platform works? You might have to a little bit at least, because you're building things for that platform. So yes, this will allow you to create apps that you can deploy to multiple platforms, and probably 80 to 90% of the work is going to be done in one spot and distributed to all the platforms. But there will be that last little bit that you may have to tweak for every platform. Now, if we go to iOS, we'll see the info.plist. This is kind of nice. They give you a GUI for it. So you can see the bundle identifier, the version, the build, the deployment target, the main interface, and so on, what orientations you'll allow or not allow, if the status bar should be default or light, if you should hide the status bar, require full screen, and so on. So there's some cool things there that are actually in GUI form as opposed to, the XML form, which I really appreciate. And that only seems to be on iOS and Mac, although I have noticed this is what happens for the Mac Catalyst. This just spins. So if this happens to you, then hopefully they get fixed soon. I think it's just a preview version or even my machine version that's the issue here. So if you see it, report it, let them know. But I think this is just a preview bits version issue. So you could still edit this with a text editor, and that would work just fine. Okay, and there's even Windows specific stuff here as well. So you'll see some specific to Windows things that again we can change. Here is again how you'd set this up for the Microsoft Store. So these are things that the Microsoft Store would want to know. For example, if you're going to update the tile, which orientations you allow, visual assets, packaging, and so on. Again, that's a nice GUI because it is Windows. So that's the platform specific stuff. For the most part, you're not going to be spending a lot of time in here. You'll spend your most time just doing the stuff necessary to launch the application, hopefully, like the Microsoft Store information and so on. But there may be times when you have specific color schemes or other things that you put into a specific folder, or maybe you have some specific code that might need to go into one because you want to access an API that's not available to all the platforms, in which case that's where you'll put those. So with that, we don't have a lot else in here. We have our app.xaml, which we can see some demos here of bringing in resource dictionaries such as colors and styles. We have our app.shell, which just has our, hey, call the main page, which there's our main page. And this main page doesn't have a lot to it as a demo, but it does show us how to put a vertical stack layout, put an image on there, how to put a label, how to put a button, how to do something with that button. So we have the on-click event, and that looks pretty similar to what we've already seen in C# before. It's just a click event. But it does show us how to do this and how to announce it as well. For example, the semantic screen reader .announce that the change has been made to that text. So let's run this. And that's where we have to talk about how do you actually run this? Because when you build this for production, you're going to build it for multiple platforms. This targets multiple platforms. Therefore, when we run it for debugging purposes, we want to run it against multiple platforms because it will look differently. So if we see the drop down next to our Windows machine here, we'll notice that there's multiple different things we can do. For example, we can run it on the Windows framework and target Windows, that version. We can also use an Android emulator. Now, if you've not set your machine up yet to use Android emulators, you'll need to install them first. So I already installed the Android emulators. That's probably a whole video in itself, just installing them and setting them up. But basically what this does is it runs a full Android phone on your computer to emulate what it would be like. You can also use iOS local devices. So if you have an iPhone or iPad, you can plug it into your computer and you can connect to it and run it on your phone as a demo device. Now you do have to have a Apple developer account, which I believe is $100 a year in order to use iOS. It's much more difficult to build your application and test it on Mac if you're running Windows. So it's a little bit more difficult because you're going to need that that local device. You have to have the Apple account and so on. If you're on a Mac, it's a whole lot easier. But if you still want to deploy it, you're going to need to have a Mac or an Apple developer account in order to do so. So you also have to have an Android developer account when you want to deploy it to the store, but that's a little easier and a little cheaper to do. So just note that. Also for deploying it to Windows, which is actually the Microsoft Store, that's going to create an account as well. I haven't done that in a while. I have it from way back, but I believe that's free now, or pretty close to free. So the Apple one, no shocker here, is the most expensive. So, and if you do have a remote device that has iOS on your network, or you can set that up, and that will walk you through the process of setting up a remote device to connect, say if you have a Mac or if you have something else on your network that you can run off of it. So just note, for our purposes, we're going to do Windows Machine and Android Emulator just to see those two in actions. So let's start with Windows Machine. This will create a WinUI application, and it will take a little bit to compile and build, but once it's done, we're going to have a complete application that's actually installed on our machine. Now, the first thing you'll get, and I intentionally made sure this message came up, you'll get this message saying, hey, you need to be on a machine that can be in developer mode. Because what happens is, with the Windows Store apps, you can only install them through the Windows Store. That's the default. However, if you're a developer and you want to do what's called side loading, which is not secure because of the fact it's not been tested by Microsoft and it doesn't ensure there's no viruses and so on, you can enable developer mode. Now, you do want to do this. You have to do this in order to test Windows apps. But I do want to point it out, and that's what it's for. Don't panic. This is not an unsecure thing to do. It's just that you are enabling your machine to sideload apps. That just means that you have to then be aware that if you have that enabled, that you shouldn't sideload apps that you don't own or don't know about. So don't just take code off the internet and just run it. Make sure you understand what that code does first before you sideload it. So the nice thing is you click here, go to settings. And in here, we can turn on sideloading. There's a whole bunch of changes in here, but install from any source, including loose files, enable that. And it says, hey, do you want to turn on developer mode? Yes. Okay. So then we just hit close and it will start running. So it's going to install this on my machine, which means that when you're done testing it, you'll have to uninstall it, but not the end of the world. So there is our .NET MAUI app. And if we resize it resizes just fine. Notice the click me here. If I click it, it says clicked one time. Notice no, it's singular. 2 times, plural, because of the fact that I have clicked it multiple times. This is a WinUI application, and it is, again, installed on my machine, and we can now test to make sure that it works the way we expected it to. So the nice thing also is we do have the ability to hot reload. So let's drag this off the screen for a minute. I'm not going to refresh it. I'm just going to make some changes here. Let's make some changes to the main page. I have been having problems with this, just so you know, but I think they've got it fixed now. So if we look at the, let's go to the label above this one. So where it says hello world, we're going to say hello YouTube. And I will action item save that, and it's already here and updated. Hello YouTube. So just making that change allows us to, to see the differences. So even though we don't have a visual designer here, we could run this application and try it out. So if we, take the comma out and just move this over. Notice the comma's already gone. So really great stuff. Notice it still clicked 16 times. So this allows us to make changes and modifications to our application without even saving them. Notice the white dot indicates it's not saved yet. And yet we've made changes to our application that are reflected on the .NET MAUI app. So that is Windows. Let's go ahead and stop that. And I'm going to undo these changes. So let's go back to hello world, hello comma world. And then let's do a drop down here and choose Android emulator. I'll choose the Galaxy Nexus. I've given it a little bit more memory, and it's a more modern version. It's the Android 12, so API 31. Let's run this. This will take some more time, and if you don't have a machine that can do Hyper-V, then it will be even more time. But it is running, it's starting the device up. Notice it looks like an Android phone because it pretty much is. And the cool thing is we do have a lot of things off to the side here. Notice we have our power switch here. We have our speaker up and down. We can rotate this and rotate it or not. I'll show you how to make sure that we have rotation lock on or off depending on what you want. But now it's building, it's going to send our stuff over to this phone and install it and then launch it on this phone and keep the debugging live. So this is doing a lot of heavy lifting right here. There's a lot of work here, which is why, yes, it's going to take some time. And if you don't have Hyper-V installed, then it will take a lot more time because Hyper-V really speeds this up. But just know that's the reason why. It's not because it's a bad process. It's just doing a lot of stuff here, running a full operating system and installing it, and then connecting to the Visual Studio and so on. But there is our launched applications. I didn't pause the video or anything, so it wasn't like it was forever long. But if we notice, it looks a little bit different than it did on Windows, but we still have the click me. It still works. It still says hello world. And if you come over here and say YouTube, it changes. Take the comma out. Watch. I'm going to hit backspace, but watch the comma go away. Okay, so backspace. Done. So that's how fast it updates. That's some pretty impressive stuff. And we can even do things like use the emulator. Whoops, I just turned it off. Use the emulator to say rotate it and see what happens. In this case, nothing seems to happen. Well, you can hit this little rotate button right here. There is on some emulators, let's rotate this back, rotate button. On some emulators at the very top, if you drag down, there is the ability to lock or unlock the rotation. So this one doesn't have it, but the other one that I have installed does. You can unlock it. So just so you know, if it doesn't unlock for you, but you want to see the rotation, there's that little icon that pops up. Just rotate it, and now you can see how it looks rotated. Okay, and you can go back. You can do other things with it as well. You can play around with it just like you would with any phone. Go back, look at what else is open. You can screenshot it, you can select it, you can go back home, and so on. Let's go back to our app and play around as much as you want. So this is our app running in Android. Now, that gives us a really good idea of how our app is going to work as we move along. In fact, I'm going to launch the installed version. This is the installed version of the WinUI project. Notice it looks a little bit different. The home versus home, the font's a little different. But besides that, it's pretty much the same thing. So with one code base, we now have two different apps installed on two different platforms that are running our C# code. So some pretty cool stuff here. There's a lot of cool stuff ahead for .NET MAUI, but that's the basics of it. Now again, I'm on Windows, so running the test for Mac, I'll do that in the future, but it requires me to put my Mac on the network and get an Apple developer account or plug in my iPhone and try it that way. We'll do all that, but just know it's a little bit different to do that. So if you're on Mac, then testing on Mac is no big deal. Testing on Android is no big deal, but testing on Windows is a no-go. So I think I'm not sure if you can connect to a Windows device. I'm not sure. But yes, developing for multiple platforms is going to take some more work. And yes, it will require you to have a Mac in your possession in some way in order to do some of the work with Mac. That's not a Microsoft thing. That's an Apple thing. Apple is pretty protective of their walled garden. And so they require you to have a Mac to publish an app to the App Store for Apple. That's an Apple thing. There are some kind of ways to get around that, but it really is easiest just to have a Mac and own that, which is expensive. But that's part of doing this process. Now you can build mostly everything. In fact, you can build the whole thing and make sure it works for Windows and Android. And then it wouldn't take much to add in the iOS stuff if you ever get a Mac, or if you start generating enough income from the Android side or the Windows side in order to do that. So that's a possibility. But from Microsoft's standpoint, you have all the tools at your fingertips to build everything you need to do. Okay, so this is some pretty cool stuff. It's just coming out. Now, one of the questions that may come up is this ready for prime time? Should I start building my apps in this? There's two different questions there. I'm going to answer them one at a time. First of all, is this ready for prime time? Yes, in the fact that it is fully supported by Microsoft, and once it actually launches, not the preview version, but once it actually launches, it's fully supported by Microsoft, and it's going to be something that they will support going forward. And with the history of where we have a Xamarin, it's going to be a long path forward. It's not going to be this didn't work, we're going to can it. They're putting a lot of eggs in this basket of .NET MAUI. And so this will continue forward. This will be something that Microsoft supports for a long time. Now, is this something that is ready to use today? If you are just starting your project, then yeah, you could probably start with this. Just know that it is still at the very start of its launch. What that means is there will be some significant changes coming to it in the coming months and year. So I would say, by .NET 8, this will be pretty solid and pretty robust, kind of like what we have with Blazor. When Blazor first came out, it was great, and we started using it right away, and it was some excellent stuff. But some significant changes came to it in .NET 6. So even though it was launched in .NET 3 and .NET 3.1, the platform stabilized, and the big features were implemented by .NET 6, which was 2 versions later. And that's because it takes some time to see how people use it and whether or not they like it, and what do they like and not like, what are the pain points, what are the features that need to be added. And there's still some features that need to be added to this, but for the most part, this is feature complete. So I would say that there will be some significant changes coming to it over the next, let's say, 18 months. But that does not mean you can't start using it today. You absolutely can. And I don't think it'll be something where you'll regret doing so. So that's my opinion on this. It is something that I will continue to cover. I'll continue to create content on. Again, if you have suggestions for what exactly you want to see about .NET MAUI, then go to suggestions.imtimcorey.com, leave a suggestion there, or upvote an existing one. That's how I make a lot of my choices on what new content is going to come out based upon that information, based upon what you as the audience want. For example, right now, a really pressing thing is APIs and microservices. What are they? How do you create them? You want content on that? It is definitely coming. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at. But if you have opinions on what you want to see, let me know. We can definitely create some courses on this and some more content. Hey, we can get a sponsor to take a course and make it public. We'll see. But but this is the kind of stuff that I think we're going to use a lot in the future. Okay, so .NET MAUI, some really cool stuff. We're going to look at .NET MAUI in Blazor coming up, because that, again, is another really cool option. These are not one or the other options. So don't get caught up in the idea that there is one best solution overall. For your specific project, there may be, but overall, this is one more option. So don't get caught up in, well, which one is better, Blazor or the regular version? It depends on your situation. It depends on what you're doing. But yeah, we do have options now. So you can either write in XAML or you can write in Blazor's HTML and CSS. So there's some cool options there, especially if you already have resources in one or the other that you can continue to grow and lean on as you move forward in this new technology. Now, if you're wondering, is Xamarin going away? Well, this is the new version of Xamarin, so yes and no. Yes, it's going away in the fact that it's going to eventually not be supported anymore, because just like all old versions, it goes out of support. But this is the new way of doing Xamarin. It does take some upgrading to get to this if you have a Xamarin project, but it is something you definitely can do, and it's definitely possible to get running and working. So just know that you can upgrade your project from Xamarin into .NET MAUI, and it will be beneficial for you to do so. So with that, that is .NET MAUI. I'm looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are, what your questions are on what you want to see next for .NET MAUI, and what your thoughts are on if you plan on using .NET MAUI. Leave the comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. Again, I like to gauge what you as an audience want to see based upon what you as an audience tell me. So if you don't tell me, then I won't do it. So that's that. All right. So with that, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'll do my best to get to as many as possible. But I'll leave this code in the description. There's a link to get emailed to you. So check that out if you want to see it. But really, it's just a basic file new project. So if you don't want it, that's fine. But thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.